Okay, good evening, everybody. I want to give you a little update here. It's 7 o'clock now. We have the new intermediate advisory in. Since we were last doing our stream here and I was last on, it was a tropical storm. And now Nicole is a hurricane, became a hurricane right around 6 p.m. this evening. Really doesn't change much in terms of the overall anything, basically. Everything that is going to happen going forward, no surprises. It was all expected, and that shouldn't be a surprise, and it doesn't change any of our planning because the planning was for Nicole to be a hurricane. So let's get right to it. Of course, if you do like the videos, be sure to click the like button, the subscribe button, get the notifications as well. It helps elevate it on the YouTube platform. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because really not too much has changed, but we'll check in on the radar and see what's going on there as well. So here's our 7 o'clock advisory, winds at 75 miles an hour. Now, you may remember I was talking about how we needed to watch that latitude number. That's the 26.6 now. It was 26.5 earlier. The number is slowly starting to rise. That means that the storm is beginning to turn more to the northwest. That was the expectation. That is beginning to happen. This is not going to suddenly veer to the left and come into South Florida in terms of Miami-Dade, and Broward is going to be right on the edge of the stronger wind field with it, despite the fact that it's starting to blow pretty good right now. In terms of everything else that's going on, rain in Royal Palm Beach, that's in Palm Beach County. Here's the new direction. Now, when we think of the direction, we think of a compass, and the reason I do this is because this number here, that 280, that tells you more than this letter here, W. W is west. But we really want to know in fine detail what is the direction the storm is heading right now. Precisely. We don't want to know that it's just heading west because west is more of a general direction. So this 280, when you think of a compass, due north is 360 or 0 degrees, due east is 90, due south is 180, and due west is 270. Before, a little bit earlier, it was moving 270. At 6, it was moving 275. Now it's moving 280. So it's gradually becoming more of a west-northwest motion. That was in the forecast. This is not going to be a Miami-Dade storm. I know a lot of people were thinking it's still going to jog to the south or something like that. That is not going to happen. The pressure also now down. The storm is intensifying. That's one of the reasons we're up to the 75-mile-an-hour winds. But the pressure down now as the storm is struggling to get better organized. I'll show you in a second on the satellite why I say struggling, because it's not that impressive on the satellite. It looks like a strong tropical storm, but it doesn't look like a low-end Category 1 hurricane. There's no change to the forecast track here. That happened at 4 o'clock. The next forecast advisory, that's the information that creates a new track. That doesn't come in until the 10 o'clock advisory this evening. And now, of course, we're on Eastern Standard Time, so our advisories come in an hour earlier. 10 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then the intermediates are at 1 and at 7. So this is an intermediate advisory here. There's no change to the track here, and as of 7 p.m., 20 miles east-northeast of Freeport, Grand Bahama. And we had somebody on the stream earlier, Pamela, who was in Freeport City, and she was getting on that western eye wall and getting rocked pretty good there, winds over 60 miles an hour. There's the future track. This is based on the earlier advisory, the 4 o'clock advisory, Category 1 forecast here, and probably maybe a little bit, I said probably maybe, so maybe a little bit of intensification, maybe to 80 miles an hour, but this is not going to suddenly strengthen to Category 2. It doesn't have enough time, and it's not organized enough. And basically the definition of the hurricane is any part in the storm that has 75-mile-an-hour winds. Then it's a hurricane. So we didn't have to find a big area of 75-mile-an-hour winds. We found enough of an area of 75-mile-an-hour winds and higher up in the atmosphere too, around 10,000 feet. In fact, let me show you that because that kind of shows what we're looking at here. So this is the Hurricane Hunters. This is a NOAA plane, came out of Lakeland and flew down there this evening, the plane right now on that southwest bound leg. But the plane went through, found a pressure approximately of 976 millibars, so that's a little bit lower. found a pretty good core on the east side there of strong winds, and then the plane went around and came back through and found a pretty good core of strong winds on the northeast side as well. The plane did not find as strong of winds on the west side, except right near where the center is. So the center is right there. This is kind of the what we would think of as the eye wall or the radius of maximum winds here. And this purple here, these are these excuse me, these are these hurricane force winds, and the plane's going to do this. It's going to go over here and then go back that way. So we're going to see within the next hour here what the winds are like on that northwest side. They're probably pretty strong, at least gusting over 60 in this area back here in the north side and the northwest side. They are probably gusting to near or over 70 miles an hour, but the plane only needs to find one little spot of winds at its altitude that, when reduced down to sea level or reduced down to the ocean surface, because the winds are usually a little bit, there's a reduction formula. I'm not even going to go into that right now. So, but it's a representative wind at 10,000 feet that's a little bit stronger, then reduces down to what would be a hurricane force wind at the surface. So we have Hurricane Nicole there. So back to the forecast graphic here, and you can see this northwest motion that's starting to take place is going to stick. There's going to be wobbles, but the wobbles are going to affect more the area right in the immediate path of Nicole. So is it going to be a wobble that turns it towards Palm Beach County? I don't think so. It looks like the center is going to pass north of Palm Beach County. That's the center. The whole width of the core of the storm is going to skirt northern Palm Beach County, as well as Martin, St. Lucie, on up through Volusia, as well as Indian River. So all of these counties here are going to be kind of in that track of the core of the storm. That'll be the strongest of the winds. That'll be the area where you're going to want to have the best preparations in terms of your internal preparations, being with the expectation of power outages. That's the Thursday 1 p.m. time frame there. And you can see this northwest motion continues. And then as we go on, there's the Thursday night time frame, and then on into Friday, it basically turns into just a low pressure area that zips onto the northeast. No changes to the watches or warnings, nothing for Miami-Dade except for a wind advisory. Okay, that's a that is a new, in the background there you can hear it, that is a new vortex message, which basically is the plane reporting, and let's just read it real quickly here and see what it says. So the report is from 2322, so it's like 622, so it's a little bit old there. The pressure was extrapolated, so they didn't have basically what we call a drop sonde into the center of the storm. They're extrapolated from about 10,000 feet. That's what 700 millibars means up there. So the pressure, roughly, the Hurricane Center said around 980 millibars, so the extrapolation pressure a little bit low. The eye itself is open from southwest to south, and the eye continues to kind of fluctuate in size. It's been down around 28 miles. It's now gotten bigger. It's up to 40 miles. The reason it's changing its size there, it's getting bigger and smaller, is because the hurricane is struggling against the wind shear as well as the dry air that's kind of worked into the system. So in terms of a bigger eye, it doesn't necessarily mean a bigger area of stronger winds. The stronger winds, especially on the northern half of the storm, are pretty big already anyway. So unlike with Ian, when we had the eye wall replacement cycle where we had a small area of intense winds expand to a big area of intense winds, this basically is just a smaller area of strong winds that has kind of grown a little bit. It's not a kind of like an eye wall replacement cycle per se. All right, so back to the watches and warnings, no changes to those. Hurricane warnings continue up the coast from Palm Beach County, coastal, north to inland sections of the counties onto the north. And basically, this is the area that's going to get the brunt of the storm here. The Hurricane Center put out this warning area 36 hours ago practically, and it's going to be spot on. 24 hours ago, was it tomorrow night? A couple nights ago. So it's I think going to be spot on in terms of where the hurricane impacts are going to be. And then the tropical storm warnings are outside of that area. And once again, that is the area where we'll have strong winds. We could have winds up to near hurricane speed, so wind gusts up to 60, 65 miles an hour, maybe 70 miles an hour. But the storm is forecast to weaken as it crosses the state. Of course, storm surge, flooding, big deal. And now it's almost too late to do anything in terms of preparations outside. It's really, we're just in the stage of doing preparations inside, which means, especially in that hurricane warning area, pre-place flashlights for when the power goes out. If the power goes out, you know where to find the flashlight. Keep your refrigerator closed. I talked earlier about what you do with freezing the bottled water. For those of you who didn't do that, that's something to think of, and we'll talk about it more next time. For those of you who did freeze bottled water, what I do is I take the bottled water, I'll take it now as the storm's getting closer, put it in a cooler, just a small cooler near your refrigerator, and then it's frozen bottled water, the bottled water that you froze, presumably you did that, but if not, that's okay. But then you take the things that you might eat overnight or tomorrow morning out of the refrigerator, put it in the cooler so it stays cool with the ice packs in it per se, and then you don't open the refrigerator or freezer again, especially if the power goes out. It stays closed because you want to keep that cold air inside. Also, if you're in the hurricane warning area, and let me actually back up my graphic just a little bit here if I can. Let me see if I can. I may not be able to. Well, you know the hurricane warning area. If you're cooking, be sure if the power goes out that you turn your stove or oven or whatever off, because we've had house fires in the past where somebody was cooking, the power went out, they left the stove, they eventually went to bed, the power came on in the middle of the night, and then all of a sudden the stove came on and it caught the house on fire. So yeah, and Mark here pointed out it's a good idea to lower your AC because if the power goes out, you want to kind of keep the cool in. I know a lot of folks that have been in Florida through hurricanes, they crank it down to get the house nice and cool. It's going to make your windows steam up on the outside, but you want to kind of preserve that cool air there and keep all the cool air inside. So great suggestion there. Let's see. Joanne, no, there is no chance of a southwest track. Zero. In fact, it's not even going to be a west track now. It is a northwest track and then going to the north after that. So no chance of a southwest track. This is based on actually the 4 o'clock forecast advisory. This red area here kind of sweeps out where the strongest wind gusts are going to be. And in those strongest wind gusts, that's where we're going to see areas of some power outages, more widespread than just your spotty power outage here or there. These are going to be the more widespread power outages, and you can see the arrows there that loosely represent the wind direction as we go forward into time. So you can see how the wind direction kind of changes quite a bit as we go forward into time. So here we are right now. There we are at 9 p.m. and the stronger wind gusts now starting to reach the coast there, especially Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Volusia. And then there we are into 3 a.m. So the strongest wind gusts now skirting or covering parts of Palm Beach County. The strongest wind gusts throughout the Treasure Coast there into the half of the Space Coast there and extending inward almost into Polk County there, pushing on to the northwest. That's 3 a.m. tonight. So this is the area, this red area here, kind of where we see the power outages most likely. We'll put it that way. Are these going to be long duration power outages? I don't think so. I think these are going to be, in most cases, 6 to 24 hours. And for me, who went through Wilma in 2005 in Broward County and didn't have power for 13 days, a 24-hour power outage is not a long duration power outage in my book. When you start talking days, more than 2 days, I call that long duration. Anyway, moving on here, there we are at 9 a.m. and you can see the wind field area starting to decrease now as we go forward into time and the storm crosses the state. In fact, that gustiest, strongest wind field area is gone. That's 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Now, the weather's improving across South Florida tomorrow afternoon, and the weather's going to slowly improve from southeast to northwest across central Florida into tomorrow evening. And then after that, it's on out of here into the southeast U.S. as just a low-pressure area. All right, so let's get to the kind of the action right now, what's going on. There's the radar, and we've got an eye on the radar now. So the Hurricane Center issuing what we call hourly position updates. That means every hour we will get a new update on the storm's exact coordinates, and we'll also get new wind information, and we'll also get new pressure information, all those things. But you can see the heavier winds now in some of these bands that are coming on shore, and I'm going to zoom in just a second. First off, let's just kind of show the track there, and you can see there is that west-northwest motion now that has begun and continues now. The storm looks like, just from just kind of eyeballing to here, that it may have slowed down just a tiny bit. And also it may be trying to work its way, if you look at that graphic there and you say the center is right there, then it may be already to a little bit to the north of the track already. So it is already making pretty serious efforts at going northwesterly here. So once again, southwest, it is not going to happen. In fact, due west, that is not going to happen here. Let me take that 7 p.m. position, which was right there, and that's due west. Due west is into middle Palm Beach County, almost to West Palm Beach. So that's not going to happen, right? So more of a northwest track, or west-northwest, is into Martin County there, and then on more to the northwest is Port St. Lucie, and that might be a little bit of a stretch, but that's kind of all in the realm of possibility here. These bigger squalls down here to the south, they're producing some pretty heavy rain, and what's happening is as the storm gets closer and these bands over here start to come on shore, and they're paralleling the coast, especially right through the Treasure Coast, even into Broward and on up into the Space Coast, we're going to see an increasing threat for flash flooding. In fact, there was an earlier advisory here. Let me put that up real quickly, since we're covering lots of stuff here, for the possibility of flash flooding. This is from the Weather Prediction Center in Maryland, and they're saying the flash flood threat increasing after 7 p.m. So that, in fact, is what we're seeing, and you can see kind of that scalloped area there through from Broward all the way north up to the Space Coast is where rainfall rates will be increasing to 2 to 3 inches an hour in that area, and that's why the flash flooding threat is on the rise there. Back to our storm here, and let's kind of take a little radar tour here. There's a really thin, faint red line there. That is the Hurricane Center's forecast track. So we're going to kind of keep an eye on that as we go through the evening. But basically, along and to the right or north of that track is where I think the worst of the winds are going to be. They're still going to be pretty bad on the south side of the track. So Sebring, Okeechobee, Fort Meade, all going to see part of this. But the worst of the wind should be along and to the north of the track there. Here we are looking down through central Florida, and you can see these stronger bands out here. Whoops. These stronger bands out here, these are going to contain some stronger winds. This is this pretty good band. Some of you folks that are in the chat have been saying you just felt coming through Palm Beach County. That's working its way to the southwest through Delray, eventually Boca, and on into Broward. So the winds are really going to come up, and the rain's going to be blowing sideways a bit with that. The core of the storm, of course, this is the most dangerous part, the part with the highest winds. And let me stop our loop here for a second just to highlight this. Even though it doesn't look that impressive on the radar, the core is right in this area right here. Now, it looks like there is a little bit of maybe like a secondary type of wind maximum out there, and I didn't get a chance to look at the Hurricane Hunters quite closely enough. But sometimes we have these like layers of maximum winds, and so you'll have a case where you have the winds build and build and build, and then they kind of peak and then they drop off. And this area here would be called a moat, like you have around a castle, a moat. So this could be a moat that's trying to form here, and then after that, then we'd get closer into the eye wall here, and then the winds would come up again, and then they would drop off. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting is if this thing is trying to do an eye wall replacement cycle, which means that a stronger outside eye wall is forming, it's going to choke off the inner eye wall. It is happening probably at the best time, because typically when you have an eye wall replacement cycle, the storm pauses intensification, maybe even weakens a little bit, and then many hours after the eye wall replacement cycle completes, then you have intensification once again. We saw that with Ian in late September. It was a small, intense hurricane. It had the eye wall replacement cycle north of Cuba, southwest of Key West, and then became a larger, intense hurricane. But that process took, I think it was like 6 or 8 hours. It took a while. It wasn't just instantaneous. So if that's a possibility, this is not a bad time to have an eye wall replacement cycle there, if that's what's happening. This is just, I'm kind of speculating a little bit here. One of the things I may do in our next update is we can look at the Doppler velocities, what they're showing there, and there might be a couple of velocity maxima we would call it, which means that the winds are kind of, in a couple locations, are a bit stronger there. So let's move back along here and keep it going and kind of zip on down to the south here. And you can see there are some of the stronger bands once again coming into Broward, especially through Palm Beach County. Zoom on in there, you can see the pretty good band that's moved through now. And it doesn't look that impressive on radar. I mean, you're not going to see like dark reds or purples or anything. It's just that as these bands are closer to the center of Nicole, they're going to contain the stronger winds. So Broward kind of heads up here. These stronger winds are going to be coming our way as well. Let me speak just briefly, and let me zoom out here and kind of talk about also the tornado threat. The tornado threat is also going to be mainly along and to the right or to the north of the track there as well. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center, which does the outlooks for severe weather, has that risk for tornadoes basically along the coast there from, say, Martin County, which is going to be close to the landfall point, right up to almost Jacksonville, at least St. Augustine. So we could see some supercellular looking or rotating thunderstorms coming on shore that could produce nearshore waterspouts or even tornadoes onshore. So that's certainly going to be something we're going to be watching as well. Moving back on here, and there's the satellite loop, and you can see it just, for a hurricane, it doesn't look that impressive on satellite at all. It's competing with dry air. There's some wind shear now. If you look down here, and you can see the wind shear shows up quite well. These little cloud elements that are moving into the circulation, they shouldn't be moving into the circulation like that. What we should see are the high clouds kind of racing away almost in that fashion that way. You're seeing it a little bit more up here. There's better what we call outflow or ventilation up here. But these cloud elements should be trying to move away. And we've got some cloud elements going in. So that's an indication of the shear as well. Also, what you can see here is that there's kind of this dry air that is wrapping in. So it's trying to, once again, disrupt the circulation. And that's why I think the hurricane hunters, when they were out there, they said that the eye wall was open on part of the storm. In fact, let me go back here real quickly and just see what side they said it was open. I want to say they said it was south to west, but I can read it real quickly here. So they're saying the eye wall is open southwest to south. So it may not exactly correspond with what we're looking at here because the times may be off, but basically they're saying kind of the southwest to south side of the eye was open there. There was not much precipitation filling in, and maybe even not that much in the way of cloudiness. Cloudiness could have been a little bit broken up there. That was an old satellite loop, but here are the wind speeds, and the winds continue to build closer to the coast now. You can see out in the southwest Atlantic there, well offshore there, they're still blowing hard, but it's closer to the storm where they're going to be the highest. Across North Florida, we've seen gusts 47. Basically St. Augustine, 51 just east of Kennedy Space Center there of the Cape. Some wind gusts to over 40 miles an hour on down the coast. The winds are becoming a little more northerly. We're even seeing some wind gusts above 30 miles an hour in the Tampa Bay area. And then down in southeast Florida, the Lake Worth Inlet, that's that one that has been gusting pretty high today off and on. It's once again gusting to 40 miles an hour, above 40 miles an hour. And we can see our winds now in response to the circulation. Remember, the circulation is that way around Nicole. The winds are starting to become more northwesterly in Miami-Dade and Broward now. We've got some wind gusts, some pretty good wind gusts over the Keys as well. The Keys seeing some wind gusts above 30 miles an hour. And you can see the site here at West End, we call it Settlement Point. There's some wind gusts to 60 miles an hour, and then the winds may be dropping off there. But the wind direction is still northwest, so the center hasn't quite passed that location yet. I think that is probably about as much as we can cover right now. Just a quick look at the water vapor loop, kind of confirming this whole thinking of the wind shear and what's going on there. So you can see these cloud elements kind of coming up in like that, really close to the circulation. You can see this brown tannish area, that's the dry air that's trying to also be pushed into the circulation there. So good news. You know what? These are good things. I always like to think in a situation dealing with a hurricane or a strong tropical storm, does it make me feel worse Does it make me feel better? Does it not make me feel anything? And then sometimes I look at it as, well, it doesn't make me feel worse. And so seeing the structure of the storm right now, that doesn't make me feel worse, because any intensification that occurs is going to be very, very slow to occur, more of a gradual process. We're not going to suddenly jump to Category 2. The winds are going to be very slow to come up. And also the track is pretty much dialed in. Feeling good about that. Not feeling good, of course, for the folks right in line with the track where the storm is headed. But we're feeling good that there's not a lot of uncertainty where folks that are thinking, well, it's not coming here, then are suddenly going to start thinking it is coming here. So there's a lot of what I call baked into the cake going on now. There's not going to be big changes. The track is not going to change suddenly. The intensity is not going to change suddenly. This is all kind of what's, like I said, baked in the cake. So that's kind of our update there for what's going on.